Welcome to Uncovered Images. Today, we're about to embark on a journey through time with a collection of photographs that challenge everything we thought we knew about the American frontier. These images remained hidden for generations, tucked away in private collections, forgotten archives, and dusty attics across the nation. What they reveal is a Wild West far different from the one portrayed in Hollywood films and history textbooks. So sit back as we unveil 100+ rare Wild West photos that rewrite American history. The year was 1867. The American Civil War had ended just 2 years prior, leaving a nation forever changed. As settlers pushed westward in search of new beginnings, a photographer named Thomas Mitchell Crawford packed his cumbersome equipment onto a wagon and set out from St. Louis, determined to document the rapidly transforming frontier. Little did he know that his images would remain unseen for over a century, or that they would tell a story few would believe. Crawford wasn't like other photographers of his era. While contemporaries like Matthew Brady had made their names capturing the horrors of war, Crawford was drawn to the untold stories, the quiet moments between gunfights, the forgotten faces on the edges of history, and perhaps most importantly, he had access to places and people that others simply didn't. Our first collection of photographs comes from Crawford's earliest journey. The sepia-toned images show a main street in a small Kansas settlement. At first glance, they appear ordinary. Men in wide-brimmed hats standing outside a saloon, women in long dresses carrying baskets, a general store with wares displayed on a wooden porch. But look closer at the sign hanging above the largest building, Phoenix Banking and Trust, founded 1865. What makes this significant is the figure standing in the doorway, barely visible in the corner of the frame. Historical records confirm that this man is Jonathan Blackwood, a banker who would later become one of the most influential financial minds of the 19th century. These photos place him in Kansas in 1867, contradicting the accepted narrative that Blackwood never ventured west of the Mississippi. More importantly, additional photos from Crawford's collection show Blackwood meeting with several Native American leaders, including Chief White Eagle of the Pawnee. The conventional history tells us that railroad expansion through these territories was met with universal resistance from indigenous tribes. But Crawford's photographs tell a different story. They reveal negotiations, handshakes, shared meals. In one particularly striking image, Blackwood and White Eagle are examining what appears to be a map, with both men pointing to specific locations along what would later become the Transcontinental Railroad route. I reckon most folks don't want to believe that some Indian chief saw opportunity in them railroads, wrote Crawford in his journal, which was discovered alongside the photographs. White Eagle wasn't no fool. He knew change was coming whether he liked it or not. Better to have some say in where them tracks went than no say at all. As we move through Crawford's journey chronologically, we find him arriving in a small mining community in Colorado Territory by the winter of 1867. The photographs here are remarkable for several reasons. First, they show women working alongside men in the mines, something rarely acknowledged in conventional histories of the period. Second, they document the presence of Chinese workers not just building railroads, as is commonly known, but fully integrated into this frontier community. One photograph shows a Chinese man named Li Wei-chen, identified in Crawford's notes, standing proudly in front of a storefront bearing his name. Chen's Apothecary and General Goods reads the sign, and Crawford's journal entries describe how the local population relied on Wei-chen's knowledge of traditional Chinese medicine when the town's only doctor succumbed to pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. Ain't nobody questioning where a remedy comes from when their child is burning with fever, Crawford wrote. Folks who wouldn't give Mr. Chen the time of day in September were mighty grateful for his tinctures come December. The photos show a multicultural community working together to survive, a stark contrast to the simplified narratives of racial tension that dominate our understanding of the period. We see Mexican cowboys teaching Anglo settlers how to rope cattle, Chinese merchants helping to organize the town's first bank, and Native American guides leading hunting expeditions during food shortages. But perhaps the most surprising photographs in this collection center around a woman named Eleanor Blackwood, Jonathan Blackwood's younger sister. History has largely forgotten Eleanor, but Crawford's photographs suggest she was a force to be reckoned with. Dressed in practical riding clothes rather than the cumbersome dresses expected of women in that era, Eleanor appears in dozens of photos throughout the collection. Miss Blackwood arrived yesterday, Crawford noted in February 1868. caused quite a stir riding into town astride her horse instead of side saddle, wearing trousers beneath a split skirt. The banker's sister speaks 5 languages and carries a Colt Navy revolver she clearly knows how to use. She's come with plans, not to visit. The photographs show Eleanor meeting with land surveyors, inspecting construction sites, and most surprisingly, organizing what appears to be a community school. One image shows her standing before a diverse group of children, white, black, Mexican, Chinese, and Native American, holding a book and pointing to a makeshift blackboard. Miss Blackwood says education will tame the West faster than any 6-shooter, Crawford wrote. She started teaching anyone willing to learn, regardless of where they come from or what they look like. Some folks aren't happy about it, but she's got her brother's money and her own determination. Not much anyone can do to stop her. As we move into the summer of 1868, Crawford's photographs document something extraordinary, the construction of what he calls Harmony Settlement. The images show a planned community taking shape with architectural elements from multiple cultures. There are traditional American wooden buildings alongside adobe structures using Mexican building techniques. Chinese workers appear to be developing irrigation systems unlike anything else seen in American settlements of the time. Miss Blackwood has a vision, Crawford explained in his notes. She says the frontier doesn't need to repeat the mistakes of the East. Out here we can build something new, a place where different ways of living exist side by side instead of trying to stamp each other out. But the most remarkable photographs from this period show a series of meetings between Eleanor Blackwood and several tribal leaders, including White Eagle and a Cheyenne leader identified as Wolf Robe. Crawford's journals describe how Eleanor was attempting to establish legal agreements that would protect certain tribal lands from development while opening others for shared use. "It ain't perfect," Crawford wrote, "and there's plenty who think Miss Blackwood has lost her mind. But she's the first white person I've seen truly listening to what the chiefs have to say, instead of just waiting for her turn to talk." The photographs from late 1868 show Harmony Settlement thriving. We see a harvest festival with tables laden with food representing different culinary traditions. We see a school with dozens of students. We see businesses opening. A seamstress shop run by a former slave named Bessie Washington, a blacksmith shop operated by a Mexican-American family named Ortiz, a large communal barn raising where everyone appears to be participating. But then, the photographs take a darker turn. Winter arrives, and with it, visitors from the East. Men in expensive suits are shown meeting with Jonathan Blackwood, who has returned to the settlement. Crawford's notes grow concerned. "Railroad men arrived yesterday. They want the tracks to come directly through the northern part of the settlement, right through the land Miss Blackwood promised would remain undisturbed for White Eagle's people." Mr. Blackwood seems torn. There's money to be made, but his sister reminds him there are promises to keep. The photographs from early 1869 show increasing tension. There's an image of Eleanor and Jonathan Blackwood in what appears to be a heated argument. There are photographs of railroad surveyors planting stakes in the disputed territory, and others showing White Eagle and his men pulling those stakes out. We see the arrival of U.S. cavalry soldiers, their posture stiff and unwelcoming. "Folks are taking sides," Crawford wrote. "The settlement is dividing between those who want the railroad and the prosperity they believe it will bring, and those who stand with Miss Blackwood and her promise to the tribes. Each day, the mood grows darker. I fear what will come next." The next series of photographs document a remarkable moment that has somehow been erased from conventional history. Crawford captures images of Eleanor Blackwood standing between a line of cavalry soldiers and a group of Pawnee, led by White Eagle. She is shown holding up what appears to be a legal document. Miss Blackwood rode out alone at dawn, Crawford's journal reveals. She had the land deed and the treaty she'd had drawn up and signed months earlier. The captain of the cavalry didn't know what to make of a woman presenting legal papers and quoting federal law to him. His men were ready for a fight, and so were White Eagle's warriors. Instead, they got a lecture on property rights from a banker's sister who wouldn't back down. The standoff continued for 3 days, according to Crawford's notes. The photographs show Eleanor Blackwood establishing camp exactly on the boundary line. They show her meeting alternately with the cavalry captain, her brother, White Eagle, and various residents of Harmony Settlement. One particularly powerful image shows her sitting at a small table with the cavalry captain on one side and White Eagle on the other, a map spread out before them. 3 days of talk, Crawford wrote. 3 days of Miss Blackwood refusing to move. sleeping in a tent on the boundary line. 3 days of her reminding her brother of his word, the captain of the law, and White Eagle of their shared vision. I've never seen anything like it. The resolution, when it came, was not perfect. The photographs from April 1869 show a new survey being conducted. The railroad would still come to Harmony Settlement, but its route had been altered to skirt the disputed territory. More importantly, Crawford's images show Jonathan Blackwood and White Eagle signing a new document, this one with official government seals visible. A compromise, Crawford explained. The railroad gets its route, though it'll cost them more to build it the new way. White Eagle's people keep their sacred land, and the settlement will still get its connection to the wider world, though the station will be built on the south side, nearer to the Mexican family's properties, which has some of the original settlers grumbling. What happened next is where the photographs become truly historical. Throughout the summer of 1869, Crawford documented the construction of Harmony Station, a railroad depot unlike any other in the West. The building combined architectural elements from multiple traditions. The main structure was typical American frontier construction, but it featured a pagoda-style roof clearly influenced by Chinese design. The interior, visible in several photographs, contained murals that Crawford notes were created by artists from the Pawnee and Cheyenne tribes, telling their own stories of the land. Miss Blackwood says if this place is to be the gateway between worlds, it ought to reflect all those worlds. Crawford wrote, "The railroad men think it's peculiar, but Mr. Blackwood is funding most of the construction, so they keep their opinions to themselves." Perhaps most remarkably, the photographs from this period show Eleanor Blackwood teaching various settlers and tribal members to read and write in order to enable them to work at the station. We see her pointing to a chalkboard covered in railroad schedules and telegraph codes. We see people of all backgrounds practicing these new skills together. "The future is coming whether we like it or not," Crawford quotes Eleanor as saying. "The question is who will be able to participate in it. I aim to make sure it's not just people who look like me and my brother." By fall of 1869, Crawford's photographs show the arrival of the first train to Harmony Station. It's a momentous occasion with people from all parts of the community gathered to witness it. There's Jonathan Blackwood in a fine suit, Eleanor in a practical dress that still allows her to move freely, White Eagle in traditional dress but also wearing a watch chain, a gift from Jonathan according to Crawford's notes, Lee Wei Chen and his family, the Ortiz family, Bessie Washington and her children, cavalry soldiers who had been part of the earlier standoff, and dozens of others. "Never seen such a diverse group all smiling at the same thing," Crawford observed. "Don't know if Miss Blackwood's vision will last, but today at least it seems possible." The photographs from the next 2 years show Harmony Settlement growing rapidly. The railroad brought new residents, new businesses, new ideas. Crawford documented the expansion of the school, now housed in a proper building rather than Eleanor's makeshift classroom. He photographed the construction of a community meeting hall where, according to his notes, decisions were made by representatives from all parts of the community. "It ain't a perfect system," he wrote in early 1871. "There are still those who think some folks shouldn't have a say. There are still arguments and sometimes worse, but they keep trying, which is more than can be said for most places." One particularly striking photograph shows a wedding between a young white settler and a woman Crawford identifies as the daughter of Wolf Robe. The bride wears a combination of traditional Cheyenne wedding clothes and Victorian white lace. The photograph shows Eleanor Blackwood standing with the couple, along with both sets of parents. "Not everyone approves," Crawford noted, "but they're young and in love and determined to make their own way." Miss Blackwood says this is exactly the future she hoped for when she first came west. Not everyone living the same, but everyone living together. But trouble was brewing. The photographs from mid-1871 show new arrivals to the region, a mining company with interest in the hills north of the settlement. We see large machinery being unloaded from trains, teams of workers setting up camp, and company representatives meeting with Jonathan Blackwood. "Gold's been found," Crawford wrote simply. And just like that, everything changes. The tension that had been resolved 2 years earlier returned tenfold. The mining company wanted access to land that was both part of White Eagle's protected territory and valuable to the settlement for its watershed. Crawford's photographs show heated town meetings, confrontations between miners and residents, and Eleanor Blackwood once again trying to stand between opposing forces. But this time, the photographs suggest she was less successful. We see Jonathan Blackwood meeting privately with mining executives. We see cavalry returning in larger numbers. We see White Eagle and his people preparing for conflict. Miss Blackwood rides between all sides, trying to maintain the peace she worked so hard to build, Crawford observed. But gold makes men deaf to reason, and fear makes them blind to possibility. The crisis came to a head in October 1871. Crawford's photographs from this period are some of the most dramatic in the collection. They show a confrontation at the edge of the disputed territory. Mining company men accompanied by cavalry on one side, White Eagle's warriors along with many residents of Harmony Settlement on the other. In the middle, once again, stands Eleanor Blackwood. But this time, Crawford's images capture a crucial moment. Jonathan Blackwood walking across the divide to stand with his sister. Crawford's photographs from this confrontation are particularly striking for their composition. One image shows Eleanor in profile, her face set with determination, the rising sun behind her creating what photographers today would call a halo effect. Another captures the moment Jonathan reaches his sister's side, his normally pristine suit dusty from his walk across the disputed ground, his hand reaching for hers in a gesture of solidarity that Crawford described as worth more than any gold they might find in these hills. Perhaps most remarkable is the series of images showing the reactions of those watching. White Eagle's face transforms from grim resignation to cautious hope. The mining company executive, identified in Crawford's notes as Hiram Bentley of the Western Consolidated Mining Corporation, displays a progression from smug certainty to bewilderment to thinly disguised rage. The cavalry captain, caught between his orders and his growing respect for the Blackwoods, removes his hat in what appears to be a gesture of deference to their resolution. Something changed today, Crawford observed. The balance of power shifted not through violence but through choice. Mr. Blackwood could have doubled his fortune by siding with the mining interests. Instead, he chose to honor his sister's vision and the promises they had made. In doing so, he reminded everyone present that even out here, where force often prevails, principles can still matter. The banker made his choice today, Crawford wrote. Family over fortune. He told the mining men he would not invest in their operation, nor would he allow them to use his railroad connections to transport their equipment or their gold. Without Blackwood's backing, their venture becomes much more difficult. The photographs from the following days show the mining company representatives departing on the train. They show the cavalry withdrawing to a more neutral position. They show a celebration in Harmony Settlement that includes all members of the community. One particularly joyful image captures a feast held in the town square. Tables laden with food stretch through the frame. Crawford's notes identify dishes ranging from traditional American fare to Chinese delicacies prepared by the Wei Chen family, Mexican specialties from the Ortiz kitchen, and indigenous preparations contributed by White Eagle's people. Children dart between tables while adults who days earlier had stood on opposite sides of a potential conflict now pass plates and share toast. Miss Blackwood calls it a victory feast, Crawford wrote, though she's careful to remind everyone that the battle isn't truly won. We've earned a moment to celebrate, she told me. But tomorrow we need to start planning for the next challenge. That challenge came sooner than expected. Crawford's photographs from December 1871 show the aftermath of a devastating fire that swept through part of the settlement during a particularly dry period. The images show blackened ruins where several businesses had stood, including the Ortiz blacksmith shop and Li Wei Chen's apothecary. Disaster tests the true character of a community, Crawford noted beneath these somber images. Will they come together or fall apart? Will old divisions resurface under pressure? The answer comes in the next series of photographs documenting the rebuilding effort. Crawford captured images of the entire settlement working together to clear debris and construct new buildings before the worst of winter set in. One photograph shows Jonathan Blackwood working alongside White Eagle to raise a wall frame, both men in shirt sleeves despite the cold. Another shows Eleanor organizing a group of women from different backgrounds to establish a temporary medical station to treat minor injuries sustained during the rebuilding. Most telling is an image of Li Wei Chen standing amid the ruins of his shop, surrounded by neighbors helping him salvage what herbs and medicines had survived the fire. Crawford's caption reads, "Mr. Chen lost nearly everything in the blaze, but not the goodwill he had built through years of caring for his neighbors. Now they return that care in his moment of need." By early 1872, the photographs show the rebuilt businesses operating again, now constructed with greater attention to fire safety, according to Crawford's notes. The experience had served to further bind the community together, demonstrating that their experiment in coexistence could withstand not only external threats but internal crises as well. A victory, but perhaps only a temporary one, Crawford noted. Miss Blackwood knows other mining operations will come. The world is changing too fast to keep it at bay forever. But she says each time they succeed in finding common ground, they build a stronger foundation for the future. The photographs from the next several years document that foundation growing stronger through both triumphs and challenges. We see the first graduation ceremony from Eleanor's school in 1873, with students of all backgrounds receiving certificates. We see the establishment of a community banking cooperative in 1874, designed, according to Crawford's notes, to ensure access to capital isn't limited by race or background. We see the construction of a town hall with architectural elements drawn from multiple traditions. We also see moments of tension, arguments captured in mid-gesture, faces tight with disagreement. Crawford never shied away from documenting the difficulties inherent in building something so contrary to the prevailing attitudes of the time. Miss Blackwood doesn't pretend it's easy, he wrote in 1875. Some days the old prejudices resurface. Some days people retreat to the comfort of what's familiar, rather than doing the harder work of understanding differences. She says that's to be expected. The journey isn't about reaching perfection, but about continuing to move toward something better than what came before. The final series of photographs in Crawford's collection jump ahead to 1876. Harmony Settlement has grown into a proper town, with permanent buildings replacing many of the original structures. The school has expanded to include several classrooms. The railroad station serves as a bustling hub of commerce. We see new innovations, telephone wires being installed, automobiles beginning to appear alongside horses and wagons. Crawford's documentation of this evolution is meticulous. One photograph shows the town's first telephone being installed in the combined post office and telegraph station, a building that, according to Crawford's notes, was jointly operated by a former cavalry officer named James Merritt and a Pawnee man called Two Hawks who had learned Morse code during the early days of the settlement. The image captures the moment the first connection was established, with representatives from different parts of the community gathered to witness the occasion. Progress comes to Harmony in ways that preserve its character rather than erasing it, Crawford observed. The technology is new, but the hands that implement it belong to people committed to the settlement's founding vision. Another series of images documents the expansion of Eleanor's school, now housed in a two-story brick building with large windows and a small bell tower. Crawford's photographs show classrooms where students of different backgrounds sit side by side, learning not only reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also elements of multiple cultural traditions. Miss Blackwood's curriculum would raise eyebrows back east, Crawford noted. Alongside standard subjects, students learn Chinese calligraphy from Mr. Wei Chen, traditional plant medicine from White Eagle's daughter Morning Star, and Mexican folk music from Senora Ortiz. Miss Blackwood says education should prepare children for the world as it could be, not just as it is. Perhaps the most striking photographs from this period show the gradual integration of traditions in daily life. We see a Christmas celebration that incorporates elements of Chinese New Year. We see a harvest festival that blends practices from multiple cultures. We see a wedding ceremony that joins not only two people, but honors the rituals important to both families. Crawford's attention to detail extends to the changing fashion of Harmony Settlement as well. His photographs document how clothing styles evolved to reflect the multicultural nature of the community. Women's dresses incorporate decorative elements from Native American designs. Men's attire blends practical frontier wear with touches from various traditions. Even the children's clothing shows this integration, with Crawford noting that the youngest generation moves seamlessly between worlds their grandparents kept firmly separated. Most remarkably, the photographs show the continued integration of the community. We see businesses owned by people of various backgrounds, children of all ethnicities playing together, cultural celebrations that blend traditions from multiple sources. 5 years on, and Miss Blackwood's experiment continues, Crawford wrote in his final journal entry accompanying the collection. It ain't perfect. Nothing involving human beings ever is. There are still disputes, still prejudices, still those who wish things were different. But they've built something here that stands apart from the rest of the West. A place where difference isn't something to fear, but something to learn from. The last photograph in the collection shows an aging Eleanor Blackwood sitting on the porch of a modest house. Behind her stands her brother Jonathan, his hand resting on her shoulder. Beside her sits White Eagle, now showing his years as well. On the steps below them are seated Li Wei-chen, Bessie Washington, and members of the Ortiz family. Children of various ethnicities play in the yard before them. Asked Miss Blackwood what she was most proud of, reads Crawford's caption for this final image. She didn't hesitate. That we made a place where those children can grow up seeing difference as normal. She told me, they'll build a better world than we did because they'll start with better assumptions about who belongs in it. And with that, Crawford's remarkable photographic record ends. The images and journals were discovered in 1975 in an attic in Denver, apparently having been stored there after Crawford's death in 1888. They remained in private hands until recently, when they were donated to a historical archive that has begun the painstaking process of preserving them. But what happened to Harmony Settlement? Why isn't it featured in our history books? Why haven't we heard of Eleanor Blackwood and her vision for a different kind of West? The answer appears to lie in what happened after Crawford stopped taking photographs. Historical records indicate that a major flood struck the region in 1879, destroying much of the town. While many residents rebuilt, the community never fully recovered. The economic panic of 1893 dealt another blow, and by 1900, Harmony Settlement had been largely abandoned, its residents scattered to other frontier towns or back to the east. Crawford's final journal entries, discovered separately from the photographs and dated 1888, provide a poignant epilogue. By then an elderly man in failing health, he had relocated to Denver, but maintained correspondence with several former residents of Harmony Settlement. Received word today that Miss Eleanor passed last winter, he wrote in February 1888. Pneumonia took her after a long struggle. Her brother Jonathan had gone 3 years earlier. Heart failure, they say, though I suspect heartbreak played its part after watching their life's work slowly fade away. White Eagle returned to his people in '82, though I'm told he spoke of Harmony until his final days. The Wei-chen family moved to San Francisco after the flood and opened a successful apothecary there. Bessie Washington's oldest boy graduated from college back east, something she says wouldn't have been possible without the foundation Miss Eleanor gave him. Crawford's bittersweet reflections continue. Folks ask me sometimes if Harmony was a failure because it didn't last. I tell them nothing truly worthwhile ever completely disappears. Those children who grew up seeing difference as normal, they carried that vision with them wherever they went. The seeds were planted. Some will bear fruit in places we'll never see. Without Crawford to document its continuation, and with no structures remaining to mark its existence, Harmony Settlement faded from memory, an experiment lost to time until these photographs resurfaced. What makes Crawford's images so powerful is not just that they show us a vision of the West that might have been, but that they challenge our assumptions about what actually was. They reveal complexity where our historical narrative has offered simplicity. They show cooperation where we've been told there was only conflict. They present women, people of color, and indigenous Americans as active shapers of frontier life, rather than passive recipients of civilization or obstacles to be overcome. These photographs don't entirely rewrite American history, but they do demand that we reconsider it, that we look more closely at the gaps in the story we've been told, and wonder what other Harmony settlements might have existed, however briefly, that never had their Thomas Crawford to preserve them for future generations. As we reflect on these images today, they offer not just a window into a forgotten past, but perhaps a blueprint for possibilities that still lie before us, a reminder that even in the most difficult circumstances, people of vision can choose a different path forward. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Crawford's remarkable photographs. If you enjoyed this exploration of hidden history, please subscribe to Uncovered Images for more discoveries that change how we see our shared past. Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface. You never know what truths are waiting to be uncovered.